Joe Burrow. That includes Patrick Mahomes. They got a decent pass rush at times, and Trevor Lawrence is what we expected he would be. I would put Philadelphia at 6. They're 0-2 without Jalen Hurts. So that shows you his importance. They run a different offense with Jalen Hurts. They're getting, though, banged up on the D-line. A little banged up, I believe, at tight end, so I'll put them at 6. Dallas is 8-2. I would put them at 5. They're 8-2 since Dak returned. I always feel like the Cowboys, there's a certain way they have to play. Dak has to be complimentary. The running game has to be humming. And I do question Mike McCarthy situationally in big spots, but I have them at 5. The Buffalo Bills, I would put at 4. They make mistakes in the red zone. I've often compared them to Mike Tyson, the fighter. Not much of a jab, knockout power. On any given Sunday or Monday or Thursday, they can overpower the best teams in this league. Kansas City at 3. They're the number 1 scoring offense. It does feel like they're still kind of figuring out the receiving game and the offense. Sometimes I feel like they're playing backyard football. It just happens to be televised. They're so easy offensively. San Francisco with Brock Purdy is number 2. They're just overpowering. I don't think anybody would disagree here. If you watch the Niners play, visually, they look like the team with the most great players. And Cincinnati at number 1, not only are they winning, they're great against the spread because we still don't respect them as much as we should. I think largely because they don't have a lot of big-name defensive players. It is a tremendous defensive team. Their right tackle, Lyle Collins, is out, but the offensive line is significantly better than it was a year or 2 ago. They've had the same starting offensive linemen. We're one of 2 teams in the first 15 games of the season before Collins got hurt. So they don't have a lot of chaos up front. That's a position group, offensive line, that is often riddled with injuries, and they've been mostly very healthy. So those are my top 10 teams right now in the NFL in order. I think it's weird that a team would be 11-0 in one-possession games, and yet I put Minnesota at 10. But in 2 of their biggest spots of the year, and that's what the playoffs are, they're pressurized spots, they have been absolutely unwatchably bad. Kirk Cousins has just not been able to deal with some injuries. Things have to be set up perfectly for him. So that's where we are now. Let's take a break. Live in L.A., it's The Herd. Going to the hospital 30, 40 minutes later. So the game is much safer now, but players are also bigger, stronger, faster, and the collision's more violent now. So I watched when I was young, I don't remember when, but Darryl Stingley was a wide receiver who was paralyzed in a game. I can remember that. The scene was very similar to last night, players weeping. And I don't even know if I watched it live or I saw a video of it, but it was very dramatic. So Damar Hamlin remains in critical condition in a hospital. Football is, they could make it safer. They could reduce the number of games. It is football. I never really understood. Football is a very unique sport. There are guys that have played at the NFL and have been great players who didn't play high school football and didn't play college football. Antonio Gates for the Chargers, Hall of Fame tight end, will be. He was a college basketball player. So unlike, let's say, golf or pitching in baseball, where you really need experience and reps, a lot of the things in football, a lot of football coaches that recruit like their athletes to play multiple sports because they believe they can get better at things like hand-eye coordination, not playing football. So the idea that you have to hit at 12, 13 years old is nonsense. That's just not the case. In fact, one of the moments that really changed how I sort of looked at the preseason, I always love when you get what they call disruptors, when somebody comes in and says, I'm not going to do it that way, I'm going to do it my way. And years ago, Sean McVay was this young 30-year-old coach, came into the NFL and said, I'm not going to play any of my starters in the preseason. Why would I do that? Why would I have an older player in collisions? And people really push back. You have to do this. It's very important. The Rams started the season 8-0. There's no reason to have preseason. You could have inter-squad games for some intense urgency. There's no reason to have preseason games. They're a ripoff to fans. College kids don't do it, and college kids are 18, 19 years old. They have class. They can only practice at college 17 hours a week, according to the NCAA. And I watch the early games in September. The kids are ready to play. So why do 30-year-olds need 3 more games of hitting? I do not believe that's good. I don't want to sit on a soapbox this morning. I don't like a 17th game. I've defended Thursday night football. You could certainly get rid of that. But I think fewer games, less hitting does not take away from the beauty and skill of the sport. That is my takeaway. I'm not here to be a hall monitor of all sports. Very capable people make decisions. Football Morning in America, it's NBC Sports, it's Peter King. His perspective will be noteworthy this morning. I was saying this earlier, Peter. I do remember the Darryl Stingley moment. I don't know if I was watching it live or tape. I don't remember. Here's where I wasn't bothered. Peter, whenever we have a crisis, and I said this earlier, a president calls a governor calls a mayor calls the National Guard. You go to the people with their feet on the ground. I was okay with the league leaning on Sean McDermott, who's saying, hey, guys, my guys can't play. I was okay with that. Now, a lot of people aren't, and they think it should have been immediately canceled. But to me, in crisis, you always lean on the guy that's in the cockpit. You lean on people on the ground. Did it bother you that it seemed to take a while to cancel the game, Peter?
No, not really, Colin. I didn't think there was any way they could play after the ambulance had left and we heard that the emergency life-saving techniques that were used. So, I mean, we figured that the game probably was not going to continue. But look, it's to me, it's a little bit crazy in real time to be suggesting call the game with an exclamation point. Take your time, make a reasonable decision, make a reasoned decision, and then let's all move on. That's what I think happened. And look, I don't know what happened. I don't know if Zach Taylor said our guys can't play and McDermott said our guys can't play. We don't know that. So I think it's best in times like this to essentially say, let's let all precincts report first before we go making, basically decisions before we have all the information.
Peter, let me throw this. I said, out of respect for the Hamlin family, I said, sports have ties. It's just a tie game. There's no space in the schedule. Let's not jam it in. Go to another series of tiebreakers if you have to. That's what baseball does. Baseball came to a conclusion that they didn't have space in their schedule for some of these late season games to figure out who's in. They just go to tiebreakers. What about just saying, out of respect for the family, we're going to make an exception. It's a tie, which it certainly could have been, and just go with the seeding from that point. Does that make sense to you?
Well, I think what makes more sense to me is just to have the Bengals and Bills play 16 games this year. And look, I have no idea what they're going to do. It really isn't the time today to be thinking about this, but it will be the time soon to think about this. And to me, Colin, I'm going to take you back a couple of years. I remember, this is almost 3 years now, because soon after COVID hit, I remember writing and reporting a lot on what the NFL was thinking about the 2020 schedule. They were considering all sorts of alternatives, playing a 12-game schedule, not starting the schedule on time in September, maybe starting in October. They were thinking of everything. And at the time, I remember specifically one leading voice in the NFL telling me, look, this is going to be one of those years. We're going to get through the year. This is going to be one of those years where people really shouldn't care if one team plays 10 games and another team plays 14. Because we are in just an extraordinary time in the history of this country.
Yeah.
Well, I don't see the problem with the Bills and Bengals playing 16 games instead of 17.
Yeah.
And, wherever the games are played, whoever has home field, let's not take this as some outrage if some team goes down a slot in the seedings. Who cares? The Bengals and Bills are both going to the playoffs.
Right.
Where they play their games, I don't care. And they shouldn't either.
Yeah. By the way, Cincinnati got to the Super Bowl playing road games last year. Buffalo's gone to Kansas City and won. I think with the new technology in the helmets, with coaches talking to players, it has eliminated